Hello, my name's Pippa. I'm the Grants Administrative Officer here at the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, and this is a short video to tell you about what the funding network is. What is the funding network? So, it's a streamlining of the application process for grants. It's conducting due diligence checks that would usually have been carried out previously in your application form and in the safeguarding checklist, all in one place. So that once those checks have been carried out for an organisation, that means that they then have pre-approval then to apply for any grant funding that comes up through our office. What does the funding network mean for you? So once you've joined the funding network and your application has been approved, we will check on your details on an annual basis and ask you to notify us if any of your details change. The aim of this is to reduce you having to do repetitive checks when applying for funding. So once all those due diligence checks are completed, they can then be applied to any funding opportunities that you then apply to. It's also to help you build up relationships with other organisations within our funding network. So if you can speak to your other local providers in your area and build up capacity and support for your organisation. We'll also be making free training workshops available to members of our funding network. However, I need to be very clear that if you are approved to join the funding network, so you complete all of those due diligence checks and are successful in joining, and we will help you to work on how to answer those questions. You won't just be left to flounder on your own. We'll work with you to get those answers correct. That doesn't guarantee that you will definitely get funding, but it just ensures that all of our funders start at the same baseline to then be able to apply to funding with all of those checks carried out. So what kind of questions we'll be asking in the application to join the funding network? We'll be asking you questions about your contact and organisation details. So stuff about what the name of your organisation is, what your address is, your main contact, if there have been any criminal offences or misconduct or conflict of interest things around your organisation that we need to be aware of. We also want to know about quality assurance. So have you got risk management practices in place? What are the purpose and objectives and of the governance documents for your organisation? Do you have a constitution? We also want to know that you've got equality, diversity, inclusion policies in place. We also want to know what levels of insurance you have around public liability, employers' liability, and indemnity. We'll also ask questions around your staff and management, so that will be around recruitment, induction and training procedures. We want to ensure that you've got clear lines of reports for your staff within your organisational structure. We want to know that you've got training in place for your staff and what those qualifications are for your staff and volunteers. We want to know what support mechanisms you have in place for your staff that could be suffering from vicarious trauma due to compassion fatigue or burnout, because many of our organisations, as we know, you're working with vulnerable young people and vulnerable adults. What contingencies in place do you have for the delivery of your project? There'll also be questions around financial management. So the financial performance monitoring of your organisation, external examination of your accounts if applicable. So do you have audited accounts that are either on Companies House or the Charities Commission? We would ask a standard that all organisations had at least 1 year's worth of published accounts. We'd also like to know what the free reserves are for your organisation. There are also some questions around information sharing. So do you have a data protection policy in place? What's the confidentiality and information sharing policies? Are you registered with the Information Commissioner's Office? And if not, please could you explain your exemption? As I mentioned before, around working with vulnerable young people and vulnerable adults, what safeguarding policies do you have in place for working with those people? Do you have contact details for your safeguarding lead? What training on safeguarding responsibilities do you have? If applicable, have there been checks done into your supply chains around modern slavery concerns? What procedures do you have to make sure that your DBS checks are maintained and monitored? So that's all the questions for your application form. As also, when you join the network, we will be asking you to sign up to our code of conduct. So what is in our code of conduct? So the code of conduct is around outlining ethical and professional behaviour that we expect of our grant recipients. So it is to ensure that any organisation that we're funding are upholding the values and supporting the priorities of the police and crime plan. You can already find a copy of the Code of Conduct on our website. If you go to the funding section and then go to Funding Network, you can download a copy of the Code of Conduct that we will be asking you to sign up to. But I'll just give you a snippet of the headlines of what the Code of Conduct covers. So the Code of Conduct covers respectful treatment. So it's ensuring that there's no discrimination, harassment or victimisation in the workplace or in any of our interactions with each other. Professional behaviour, so it's around building trust with us and the people that you work with, in speaking out against unethical practices. Interacting with vulnerable groups, so treating vulnerable people with respect and ensuring that their safety and well-being is taken care of. Human rights and employment law, so complying with human rights and employment law, including the Modern Slavery Act that I briefly touched on there in the eligibility criteria for the funding network. Also, management of risks, so properly managing and sharing intelligence around any risks. Continuous improvement, so using best practice and promoting innovation in your grant-funded activities. Value, so we're trying to ensure that your funding shows its purpose and it's demonstrating value for money. And reputation, that's around our reputation and yours and ensuring that we have the public's trust. Also, the Code of Conduct covers environmental sustainability. Environmental sustainability, there we go, got it right. Confidentiality, conflicts of interest, and ethical behaviour. As I said, all of this can be found on our website in the Code of Conduct. If you go to funding and then the funding network, you will be able to download a copy of the Code of Conduct. So what happens next? So you can apply to the funding network at any time. It will, generally speaking, be open all the time. However, we are going to just close it for a short period on the 30th of April this year so that we have time to process applications to the funding network ahead of people then applying to the Safe Communities Fund, because we need time to just make sure that you've met all of those due diligence checks so that you're then eligible to apply to the Safe Communities Fund. Details on the launch of the network will have been emailed out, and you will also find them on this page on our website. We'd also like to hear from you as members of the funding network. What kind of training would benefit you as an organisation? Would you like some more training around how to complete an application form, or is there anything else that you would find useful that we could provide for you free of charge? The Safer Communities Fund will be launching on the 1st of April this year and will close on the 15th of May. This year it's open for 6 weeks because we're aware that it falls over the Easter holidays, and we wanted to allow providers more time in case of staff absence. Those of you that are successful with your applications to the Safer Communities Fund, your funding will then start on the 1st of October this year. Okay, I know that's a lot of information to get your head around, and there are other documents on this page on our website for you to be able to have a look at. But if you have got any questions, then please email me on opcc.commissioning@hampshire.police.uk, and I look forward to working with you.